Welcome to Rock Talk, Round Rock ISD's exclusive show where we're going to be sharing with you topics and information from Round Rock ISD's talented educators about the things that matter most to parents, our students, and education and safety. So today, joining me, Corey Ryan, as our three established guests. These are instructional technology experts in the district, and we're here to talk about internet safety, which is a hot-button issue in our homes across Round Rock ISD and across the country when we're talking about students in 2015. I have joining me is Mr. Jeff Uselman, Lannon Heflin, and Autumn Hebert. Welcome to Rock Talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are live here at Cedar Ridge High School thanks to the outstanding students we have in Ms. Tish Saliani's Media Tech Practicum class. And this is a new concept that we're going to be doing, and this is our first episode, so we're thankful that you're joining us here today. We're going to talk internet safety, obviously something that this group knows very well, working in our classrooms and our schools and providing support to our teachers and instruction to our students in the areas of technology. I'm going to ask a couple questions, go through some topics, and we'll go from there. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So I know that internet safety expands above and beyond social media, but a lot of times the hot button issues are social media because this is where the dialogue happens for students. What kind of areas are there in social media that you're observing and working with students that are most popular with our students? And maybe Lannon, you want to jump off and say what and start the topic?
Sure. And the ones that come to mind, I'm sure everyone's heard of Twitter and Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, of course, and really the list could just go on and on because it seems like every time we think we've seen them all, there'll be another social media outlet or application that comes along that students find popular. So it's really a never-ending battle to chase the next great social media outlet.
So, Autumn, in your experience in working with schools, what are some of the characteristics of social media that might make them an area of concern for parents in terms of internet safety?
Well, I think in terms of internet safety, you want to just be mindful of what you're posting out there, what you're sharing with a bigger audience that maybe you don't realize that's not in front of you, that you don't see. And being aware of the fact that what you post is going to stay there. What you share as, is basically what you're providing as what people see you as a student, as a future leader. So I think about being mindful of how you represent yourself. I think that's really critical in terms of social media, in terms of just being a digital citizen. It's just a different realm. It's still real world, even though it's not tangible in front of you.
What are some, they're all kind of different social medias, but obviously they operate and work differently. Are there any kind of hot button or hot areas of social media that we're really trying to focus on and making sure that students understand how they work and understand to be extra safe on those areas?
Well, I think we were discussing in a meeting not too long ago how over easy it is for students to just simply share or repost or retweet information that they haven't really screened for themselves. And as Autumn pointed out, it happens quickly. It seems like there's no harm to. I'll just resend something someone else has sent me. I'll forward on a quick little comment. And in doing so, they could be damaging someone else. They could be sending on inflammatory information. And those are very overt, but what's not so overt sometimes is just the long-standing effect of the kind of person that you're seen as if you're constantly sharing and forwarding things that are not necessarily objectionable, but just they become your character. And you might become seen as somebody who it really enjoys seeing other people get hurt online. That may not be something that you really want, but you think it's funny, or you don't even pay any attention to it. You just forwarded it along because someone gave it to you. And now all of a sudden your reputation to future employers, higher ed, and maybe as somebody who's careless and inconsiderate of other people. So maybe there's an immediate shock factor to it. Maybe there's a long-term, just your whole character is misconstrued because of the kinds of things that you just like, forward, retweet, without thinking about what you're actually putting out there.
And they make it so it's so easy to do that like you say, you don't think about it. You just hit the button, you just keep going. And then and one of the things we discussed, pretty soon you start getting ads or other things that start coming up to your whatever social media site you're on, and pretty soon students may be clicking on those and liking those, and it just keeps building and building.
So what are we doing now in schools in addressing the internet safety and some of the things we talked about, specifically, in having students understand that what goes on the internet lasts forever?
Mm-hmm. Well, when you're a student in Round Rock ISD, when you're on Round Rock property, there's very little social media activities you can participate in, and that's by design. We wish that it weren't such a wild landscape, that we could be more flexible. I think we're relatively flexible compared to others because we've got very responsible students and faculty overall, but we still have to be very careful. The unfortunate reality is that students they all carry a phone in their pocket. They've all got a device or access to it for the most part, and what we try to do is make sure that we teach responsible digital citizenship and help educators understand their responsibility to relay the concept of your long-standing digital footprint. Help parents understand that it is their responsibility to supervise what is happening on their child's device, and not to leave it to chance that the student is behaving in a way that is in alignment with the family's value system. Every family has a different set of core values, but overall we know they want their children to be safe, to be well respected, and to be representing the family or the family unit. And the sad thing is that that's not always the case, but parents are sometimes oblivious to these activities because they don't take the proactive steps to make sure they have access to the kinds of back-end tools, passwords, logins, sharing, be a friend on Facebook, that sort of thing, so they can take, it's a lot of work. As parents, we have to take the extra diligent effort to supervise that activity and accept that it is more work than it used to be when it was just monitoring phone calls.
So you brought up a good point, Landon, I kind of want to explore and maybe brainstorm as a team, as a group here. You kind of started talking about parental best practices for social media. I think you were kind of leading towards maybe one, just having a general monitoring and knowing what accounts your student is on, and knowing the username and passwords. Is there anything else we can kind of think of that would be best practices for internet safety when it comes to social media for parents?
Well, one thing I kind of think about is who are your students communicating with? We have these accounts, and they're able to reach more globally and influence their circle of friends, if you will, a little bit larger. But who are those people? Do you know them? Do you know who your children are interacting with through that social media? I think that's a critical piece, to know their friends, know what they're posting, just being aware of how that's part of their daily life.
So we could say knowing username and passwords and what networks they're on, and then just being cognizant of who they're talking to.
I'd say be their friend. I mean, if they're if they have a Facebook or account or
follow them on Twitter.
Yeah, follow them on Twitter so that you can see what they're posting, and as long as you let them know that you're watching them. And I think Autumn even had said her son knows that his friends know that she's watching also. So they all are kind of paying attention to what they're posting.
As a parent, and when I talk to other parents, I always encourage them. The best peace of mind for me comes in knowing that at any moment I can log on to my children's accounts, delete a post, or just take that account down completely. I know the password, I know the steps that it would require to do that, and if I detect, not necessarily that I would suspect my own children would misbehave, but they may be getting involved with individuals that we don't know, and I want the ability as a parent to pump the brakes on that right now. And if you have to go fishing for the passwords or you simply can't get access to them, the more time passes, the more the internet gets hold of that information and it gets shared out.
There's another concept that I wanted to expand on that you had mentioned, and that's being a good digital citizen. What are the elements that we would use to define digital citizenship here at Round Rock ISD?
I'll start it and let you guys jump in, because we actually talk about it with really 3 key points. There's digital safety, digital citizenship, and digital literacy. They all come together to create a well-rounded 21st century person or student. To be digitally safe means you're not going to be putting yourself at risk with behaviors, and I think those, we read about those and hear those all of the time. To be a good digitally literate student, how do you interpret the media that you're ingesting, all the links and the ads that these guys were talking about, the things you see on television, and you're inundated with opportunities to go down rabbit holes wherever you go, and be misled through social engineering and people taking you different directions. And then the overall digital citizenship is, how do you behave responsibly, respectfully, and be a courteous person. Recognize when cyberbullying, for example, may be happening, and act on that. Don't copy someone else's homework. Don't plagiarize just because you can digitally do that very easily. Be the kind of upstanding citizen that, as Jeff joked in a conversation not too long ago about, how would you want your grandmother to feel about the way you're behaving online? Are you a cheater? Or are you a liar? Or are you being unsafe? And I think about my poor grandmother. She wouldn't want me to be any of those things. She wouldn't understand what I was doing online by any definition. But even without that element, who do you want to be represented as?
And I would, to piggyback on that, both with students and adults, anything you put out there, would you want to see it on the front page of the newspaper? I mean, to me, that's kind of the standard I try to use when I'm posting, is if I put something out there and it's on the front page of the American Statesman, am I okay with that? So.
In working with students and teachers, what do you think the response is to some of these ideas in terms of digital citizenship? Is it something that students are responding to very well, or is it still something that we're
I think,
better at?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think that it means a lot more when it comes from other students. Of course, we're the adults in their lives, and we like to believe that they trust everything we say. But I also believe that most students, my own children included, don't always know that or believe that I'm as savvy, or that I'm a hip, or that I may be just getting in the way of their social life. Having very motivated students willing to share and coach other students on proper behavior is the direction we need to go, more so as a district. All school districts do. And
on that note, transitioning, there's obviously a lot of positive things that can come from social media and from the internet. The example I talk about ad nauseum is there's this great program at Round Rock High School where there's School Spirit Squad. Mm-hmm. It's the @Dragon Nation RRHS Twitter handle, and it's their student squad. They've done different projects with their student council on having opportunities to share positive feedback on different students and things like that. Is there any other things that you've noticed in working with schools of students having positive examples or positive experiences on social media?
Well, like my son's algebra teacher tweets tips, study tips and things like that, and he's incentivized to follow her Twitter feed because it's really helping him with his algebra.
Yeah.
I would just expands the opportunity for them to reach out to more experts in the field on any topic out there. Mm-hmm. And it also provides them the opportunity to be responsible citizens, and use the different social media tools in a proper way.
We did a lot of work last week with an outside consulting firm as we're preparing a more robust digital citizenship program for Round Rock ISD. And this consulting firm, in a sidebar conversation, he was talking about his growing employee base. He doesn't have a brick and mortar office, so he hires young, hungry, entrepreneur-style people to work for him across the nation. And he commented, he goes, I spend 30 seconds on a resume. The rest of my time is spent looking at LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, because I need to see not only can they behave responsibly, represent themselves professionally, but I want to see the body of work, the canon of work that represents that they can fulfill what I need as a CEO of a company. And I think about the opportunities, to your question, that students have to put their best foot forward in LinkedIn, in Facebook, even in Instagram, places like that, where the future of employee screening is your virtual portfolio spans all of these tools. And mixing in the good with the bad can maybe cost you a job. So you have to be super careful.
Are any of you familiar with any, not mentioning any names or specific instances of kind of a horror story of sorts of social media and dealing with something where somebody put something out there in specific? Is there any kind of example you can share with us, just so someone understands the scope of what putting something out there that's not positive can do?
Well, I'll come back to one of the examples we talked about earlier, and I think about just this idea of wanting to be able to give your like or your favorite instantaneously, and being thoughtful in terms of what are the ramifications of that. Not a specific example per se, but just thinking about what are you again promoting, what are you saying in terms of yourself as a person, but how are you impacting others? So I feel like I think it's just, again, I just come back to this idea of being a good digital citizen means what type of behavior are you wanting others to see you as, so that you can avoid situations of that nature.
There was a trend in, at least I know in some Central Texas high schools, probably statewide, but it became a Twitter trend to create a rumor-based situation. And that can get out of hand because people say very damaging and unkind things about other people using their actual names, mostly not true. And the result of that is not only does the person whose name gets put into an untrue statement have to clean up their false reputation, but the person doing the saying, the student making that claim, has put themselves out there by name in a negative way. And now you've got parents and faculty members and community members who have to look at our student body or the student body of those schools and say, what's true, what's not true. The damage may not be immediate, but the long-term effect, out of context, who knows 5 years from now when I'm applying for a job that that's not a true statement about me, and someone else has interfered with my ability to be successful.
I'm going to ask one more question on social media, and then we're going to go into a more broader topic of the internet and get away from this. One of the trends in social media has kind of been, when it started, it was very much, this is my public place where everybody can see the dialogue, or people who follow me can see the dialogue, and anyone can kind of follow me. Some sort of barrier was more open. Now we see things like Snapchat, where they're very much closed conversations and incidents and focused on privacy and deleting and things like that. What are the advices and things that you're giving to students and parents in dealing with this? Is it a similar advice set? Is it a different area of caution for parents? And
to me, it's different. My advice to parents: monitor if your students are getting involved with something like a Snapchat, and depending on the age, I say put a stop to it. It's not a safe environment for younger children. You don't have a way to monitor. I had a friend of one of my sons show me very clearly where Snapchat, the students thought, well, I can take a snap picture, it sends it to an individual, and then it's just gone. How can that be any threat? He showed me within a few seconds how those things are really being captured by other third-party utilities, and young children behaving very dangerously, putting themselves in great risk, thinking it's just between them and another person, are finding that photos and things are being captured by third-party websites, and parents are completely unaware until the damage is done. So to me, sites like Snapchat, I'm not overly familiar with how they all work because I'm not a user of them myself, but I know they make me very uncomfortable as a parent and as an educator to think that those sites are constructed so that young people can hide information from the adults in their life.
So that could also be like a best practice for parents when the new social media comes out, is just having an understanding of how it's used, and use extra caution when it's a social network or something that's private versus out there. Whereas if I'm Twitter, anybody can follow me and see what I'm doing for the most part. Or Snapchat's all closed. Is that pretty safe to say?
Mm-hmm.
And part of the problem is there's new sites coming out all the time. And the students and kids are finding them, and trying to keep up with them is a full-time job.
Are there any resources out there that you all reference? I mean, I know I go on different websites like Mashable.com to kind of get information on social networks. Is there anything that you can reference that could be used as a tool for parents?
Well, one of the things we are really focusing on is commonsensemedia.org. And that's a website that has all kinds of information in there for parents, for students, for teachers, for everybody. So
It really is a one-stop shop. I would send every parent there first. They have a great app that lets you screen media before you allow your student to perhaps go to a movie. You can screen the contents of that movie and get, is it really age appropriate? There's a section in the navigation of that website that just says, like for parents. And any information you wanted about the effects of cyberbullying, the signs of cyberbullying. I mean, what else is in there? It's a treasure trove of good information.
So that's commonsensemedia.org.
Everything there is free. There are games, there are apps. It's pre-K 16. I mean, it goes all the way up.
Awesome. So obviously, and some of the things that we've talked about here in terms of the internet deal with interactions between individuals, and oftentimes, unfortunately, that comes to cyberbullying in this hot button topic. Jeff, if you can tell me a little bit about what the district is doing in terms of educating students about the importance of being citizens and ensuring and being watchful in areas of cyberbullying.
Sure. So what we want students to know is that cyberbullying is just the digital version of being bullied. And so make sure that your parents are aware. And we talked about commonsensemedia.org. They have a whole section in there about cyberbullying, and it tells you what to do, who to contact, how to help your student, and so just some tips that off the top of my head from what I remember reading in there was, you tell your students don't respond to cyberbullying, log off, and reach out for an adult.
And I think specifically from a campus level, as a parent, I know that there's counselors available at my student's campus that would be able to help me, resolve that issue if it's something that's feeding into the school setting as well, because we are here as educators to help support students. So it may happen outside of the school building, but we are here to support so that they are successful.
So the number one issue and the number one thing we want parents and students to know about cyberbullying is we want everyone to be mindful of when it's happening and always tell an adult. Mm-hmm. So a great way to do that is to tell a counselor, tell a teacher, and then we also have the anonymous alert system in Round Rock ISD, which is accessed at roundrockisd.org/anonymous alerts, and that's a place where parents, students can go in, file a report, select their campus, and it automatically gets sent to their campus administration. Are there any other programs out there that you feel that would be a great resource for parents and students in understanding the role of cyberbullying and the importance of reporting?
Well, our secondary campuses are fortunate to have school resource officers available as well, and I think that cyberbullying is too often just dismissed by other students and sometimes by adults as just kids being kids, and it's not. Those harmful things, they're amplified because of the technology that's available to really spread it. I think the opportunity for a student to visit their librarian, visit with their counselor, as we talked about, even if it's not classic textbook definition of cyberbullying, could be a form of harassment. It could be, what some folks would call innocent teasing, taken to scale as bullying, and it needs to all be looked at. And so my advice is, regardless of what you think the situation is, go ahead and report it, and have, because no student deserves to feel uncomfortable or unsafe when they're in our schools.
So I'm going to read some a graphic that we found and some of the ideas about cyberbullying and kind of get your thoughts. So the idea was how cyberbullying hurts, and cyberbullying can be in the form of posts, pictures of a person to hurt or embarrass. It could be the spreading of lies and rumors about a person, pretending to be somebody else online, duping somebody into revealing personal information, and then sending threatening emails or text messages. I think it's also important to note, when we talk about digital citizenship and internet, text messaging is also falls into that realm. Are there any of those ideas in terms of cyberbullying that really kind of touch upon and your roles in working with students in schools?
Well, when they're on Round Rock property using our systems, everything is supervised, monitored, is tightly controlled as to who they have access to and can email and interface with. So because of that, we are able to detect early if a student begins to cross a line with other students, and we're very fortunate. Unfortunately, we don't monitor what people do on their private data networks. And the one I think that really stands out is when students, and I hear more frequently about students who try to gang up on other individuals through text messages, start those rumors or that sort of thing. So unfortunately it becomes that it's all too easy for other people to start, as we mentioned earlier, favoriting and tweeting and chatting and just joining in on something that someone else started, and suddenly now you're part of the problem just by forwarding something that someone else wrote. You're participating in cyberbullying, and that parents need to be aware that even though my child didn't say it, if they forwarded it to someone else, in many cases, they're liable for participating. So
we're kind of getting to the point where we're wrapping up. There's been some great information shared today. The last thing I wanted to touch upon, because when we talk about safety and best practices, one of the big things is passwords. There's so many passwords that we use, making sure your passwords are secure. What are some tips, Autumn, that we can share with our parents and our students to make sure that their passwords are safe for use on their email, social media accounts, bank accounts, and things like that?
Well, I think the critical piece is to make sure that you're following kind of just the, guidelines in terms of not something, you're not using your first name, you're not using your last name, you're not using, something that can be easily identifiable to you. I think about just some tips in terms of passwords that I've utilized. You want to include things like symbols, numbers, letters, so that way you are, not opening yourself up to any more risk than needed when you're accessing information online.
And Jeff, we have some standards in place with our email accounts and for students, right, in terms of requirements for passwords. Can you explain what those requirements are and some of our safety protocols?
So some of the safety protocols that we use is the password has to have a capital letter, a symbol sometimes, or it has to be a certain length, I believe 8 characters long. I would say the number one thing with your passwords is don't share it. Don't give it to somebody. Don't leave it out someplace. I've walked by people's computers and their password is taped to the front of their monitor. So these are just some of the tips to make sure you keep your password secure.
And Lannon, before we wrap up, in terms of email, Round Rock ISD, we now offer email addresses K through 12. Can you just go in some of the features that we're taking in terms of keeping students safe within our email system?
Yeah, absolutely. All students now, K through 12, have not only an email account but also a Google Drive access, and so that's important that parents understand that it's a Google Apps for Education deployment. It's not the same as the Gmail and Google Drive you would use at home. And you can always go onto our instructional technology website on Round Rock, and you can read more about the difference between the two, because we do get a pretty large volume of parent concerns because they have to opt into the Google platform for their students, and most do, but usually after they see that there's a difference between home general use Google accounts and those that are essentially owned by Round Rock ISD and controlled, they see, oh, this is an enterprise solution. It's not the same. They don't get advertisements, for example, that sort of thing. Secondly, the students can only email staff. They cannot even email one another. And so that email communication is used as a conduit between the teacher and his or her students, sharing assignments. If the students are collaborating, they're usually doing so through Google Docs, Google Drive, and working on files and documents. Thirdly, and very important to understand, is that we actually subscribe to a third-party application called Gaggle, G-A-G-G-L-E. And if you look that up, if parents decide to look that up on their own, I encourage them to do. Please be aware we don't use the whole suite of Gaggle applications. The only piece that we do use is the human monitoring system, the HMS side of it. And what that HMS side does is we essentially pay Gaggle representatives to keyword watch and scan all Google Docs and all email, and they're watching for different tiered levels of dangerous behavior. Some might be a swear word, and the student will get a response from a human being saying, "Stop doing that. Don't use that language anymore." Sometimes they're false positives. We all know the stories of certain book titles, things like that, that key off what sounds like a curse word, but it's not. And those are handled. Student never gets in trouble for that kind of thing. The second infraction, the principal is notified, and there's the student's continuing to misbehave by using foul language in an email or in a Google Doc, a Google Drive application. If the behavior is immediately dangerous, a student may say something that is concerning about themselves or about another student or faculty, that bypasses an email to the student. In many cases, even bypasses an email to the principal. It'll go directly to Central District, essentially emergency responders, some key contacts who work to immediately, in super rare instances, for example, maybe even deploy law enforcement if they believe the student's safety is a concern. And I hope parents appreciate that that's, it's not a matter of private information. They're working in our networks, on our systems, and we want to supervise and make sure they're safe while they're doing that. And I feel very fortunate that we have that system, because it allows us to keep a proactive, positive experience for all students, and also an opportunity for us to teach digital citizenship by course correcting if somebody uses language that's not appropriate.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to close with 10 seconds from each person, kind of round out summation. One last idea you want to make sure parents go. I want to thank all of our viewers today for visiting us here on Rock Talk. We're going to try to do this regularly here. Different topics, keep it fresh and keep it moving. Different ideas. Encourage anyone to follow us on Twitter and send us questions. Happy to dive deeper and further in these areas and topics as we get going. And with that, we'll start here with Jeff. Jeff, in 10 seconds or less, what's one takeaway that you would parents to take away from this in terms of internet safety?
Well, I would say make sure that you're monitoring your students' accounts and know what they're doing, and know, like Lannon had said, make sure you have the passwords for those accounts, so if something does happen, you have the ability to either shut them down or to take corrective action.
Awesome.
I like to encourage parents on their home Wi-Fi networks to use OpenDNS. It's a free and open home internet filtering solution that allows you to filter out all the bad, and at the same time you can use those back end to maybe block something, like if you don't want Instagram or anything like that at all on your home Wi-Fi network, you can block those. It just takes just a little bit of setup on your home Wi-Fi router, and you're effectively filtering the internet at home too.
Autumn?
Just connecting to what Jeff said, just be mindful of what your students are using, be aware, ask questions, and just be a part and know that, you may not have all the answers, but there's great resources out there to help guide you.
Awesome. And we'll have links on our website at roundrockisd.org/rocktalks. We'll have all of the examples that we talked about here, resources and more. Thank you again for joining us here, and have a great day.